Astrology and current events. Let's look at the case of the Menendez brothers that's back to the public eye, from the gruesome events of the night of the 20th of August 1989 when the two brothers, Lyle and Erik Menendez, gunned down their parents in their home in Beverly Hills, California. They lied to the police and to everyone else thereafter, and made it look like the works of a mob. They were later arrested in March 1990, tried and sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, for the murder of both Jose and Kitty Menendez. They have since explained that it was out of self-protection motivated by the sexual and emotional abuse they endured from their father and mother. This video looks at the events from an astrological point of view. We will look at the family members as individuals and study how they might have related to each other using the position of the planets in their birth charts as symbols to tell a story.
Let us start with Jose Menendez, the dad. He was born on May 6, 1947 with his sun, Mercury and Venus in Taurus. These point to a man who worked hard to build a stable foundation with money on his mind and in his heart. His Venus is strong and comfortable, signifying lots of support in matters around creativity, love, and money. He was a very wealthy businessman, well known among celebrities as an executive at Hertz Corporation and later at RCA Records. Mercury is retrograde and therefore, he might miss a thing or two where he isn't keen in work and relationships. He was said to be shrewd in his dealings and was not faithful to his wife. His moon in Libra maintains the importance of relationships and contracts are a major part of his life. He is always seeking a point of balance, and while thinking of others he might get too intertwined with their stories, resulting to codependency and manipulation in the guise of staying together. Kitty Menendez, the mother. She was born on October 14, 1941, with the sun in Libra and moon in Leo, a clue that her life was centered around relationships and also around being seen. She was a teacher before she was a glamorous housewife. The moon is in a tight conjunction to Pluto, which is a strong indication of an intense emotional life, predisposed to dark moods and often overwhelmed by paranoia and fear. She was depressed as a child in an unhappy home with an abusive father. Chiron is not far away from this collaboration, pointing to an inner child wound and another of self-expression to be healed. Her Mercury in Scorpio has an ability to focus and investigate to reveal hidden secrets, or it could indicate a personality prone to dark thoughts, hateful speech, manipulative and controlling tactics. She was also an alcoholic with an inclination to suicidal ideations. Her Mercury is opposite a stellium of Saturn, Lilith and Uranus in Taurus. She might have been cold and distant, limited and controlled by material possessions. Ruled by her Venus in Sagittarius, there was a strong desire to be an adventurous, free spirit not burdened or chained down by commitments. Her Mars is at home in Aries, showing a passionate pioneer who loves her independence and may sometimes come off as self-centered. Lyle Menendez. Born on January 10, 1968, with the Sun and Mercury in Capricorn, ambitions and how he was viewed in the public were a major part of his life. Capricorn is the sign of the father or grandfather. Structure, discipline and duty are not to be left behind. It is said that he turned into an image of his father after his death. He made investments, bought hotels, Rolex watches and even hired bodyguards. His sun is ruled by Saturn depressed in Aries, indicating restrictions to his independence and blocks to his pioneering spirit. His moon in Taurus is seen through family's wealth and how he much enjoyed it. It sits in an opposition to Neptune in Scorpio, where there is illusion, negative feelings and dark fantasy within close bonds. The moon is also not so far away from Lilith in Taurus, which is an indication of something abominable in what was seen as a very comfortable lifestyle. Erik Menendez. He was born just before a new moon in Sagittarius on November 27, 1970. His sun in Sagittarius highlights an adventurous, non-conformist spirit, interested in understanding the mechanics of how we belong as part of a whole. He traveled and hired a tennis coach after the murders as he participated in competitions overseas. Curiosity and the desire to learn more about various topics like philosophy is common with Mercury also in Sagittarius. However, it does not function well here as it skips the small important steps to run towards the big beautiful picture. His moon in Scorpio is in exile and lacks the tools to control volatile emotions. It also depicts a troubled relationship to the mother. His Jupiter lies on top of his moon, intensifying these dark feelings, experiences, and bonds, especially when these points are activated. His Venus weak in Scorpio points to some lack in partnerships and connections and a love of dark arts. He wrote a book called Friends about a boy who killed his parents. They are all in opposition to a weak retrograde Saturn in Taurus, pointing to the lack of a solid foundation to begin with, lack of boundaries, and difficulties with saying no to other people's demands. There's a struggle of not feeling good enough and an avoidance of letting others down, stemming from a heavy sense of duty from an early age. Many people question why he never spoke up about the abuse before they got caught. On the night of the shotgun murders, the full moon lunar eclipse of the night of the parents' death was in the sign of Aquarius, which is detached from emotions and focuses lots of energy on the rights of the individual in the group. It is rebellious and isn't afraid to stand alone, mostly for a greater cause. The full moon was ruled by Saturn in Capricorn, which was in a close conjunction to Neptune. Together they are sad and can bring up disappointing memories and reminders of restricted dreams that evoke ambivalent ambitions. Uranus, the modern ruler of Aquarius, had just joined the other two outer planets, setting off a desire to rebel, to break free from the chains of top-down structures. Jose Menendez. The full moon lunar eclipse on August 17, 1989, 3 days before the shooting, was not far away from his Jupiter at 17 Leo, illuminating his self-expression and leadership skills. Jupiter here could enhance good governance, but it could also take selfishness to the extremes, especially with the North lunar node in the same sign. Pluto here creates a pivotal point of empowerment or disempowerment through individualism that stems from childhood and finds its way to the next generation. On the night of August 20, 1989, the fiery, livid moon in Aries was ruled by Mars crossing over his Lilith and Chiron conjunction in Virgo, that already pointed to a dark wound to be healed in his daily life, routines, and in relation to the services he provided. Lilith is the shadow side that lives very well in the land of taboo. Mars crossing over it was a trigger point. Kitty, at the time of the shooting, the fiery moon was right on top of her, Mars shining light on her actions and bringing in themes of violence. Transiting Mercury crossed over her south node in Virgo, activating a karmic point as she let go of her daily life. Pluto was in a conjunction to her natal Mercury in Scorpio, coming in with theme of death. Lilith passing by her sun in Libra signaled that something dark and sinister was to happen to her, connected to her relationship patterns. Lyle. On the night of the murders, Pluto in Scorpio was in an exact opposition to his Lilith, bringing in death to something scandalous. The moon had passed over his Mars in Pisces just after the full moon. A few days later, it was on top of his Saturn in Aries, first triggering deep emotions, followed by anger and aggression from a place of restriction. Transiting Mercury was close to his Pluto in Virgo, coming in with thoughts to end daily life as it was. Erik. The decision to kill their parents happened on the event of a full moon lunar eclipse in Aquarius. Eclipses bring great endings and great beginnings, as the nodes of the moon try to get the soul on the right track of what it came here to do. At 18 years old, Erik was about to have his first nodal return. The North lunar node was close to his own in Aquarius, the sign best known for rebellion and revolution. The South lunar node crossing over his sun in Leo illuminated his childhood wounds and the desire for self-expression. Pluto in conjunction to his weak Venus carried the theme of life and death. Lilith was on his fallen Mars as the shadows suppressed aggression erupted towards those who had mistreated him. The brothers admitted that what pushed them to kill their parents was a distressing talk about how their father abused them sexually and how their mother ignored and blamed them for it. On March 11, 1990, the day of a full moon in Virgo, Erik came back from a trip and turned himself in. Pluto in Scorpio was in a conjunction to his Jupiter-Moon collaboration and directly opposite his Saturn in Taurus, hence the manifestation of karma in relation to issues around life and death. The Netflix documentary, Jose. On October 7, 2024, when the Netflix documentary on the Menendez brothers was released, Mars was just about to hit Jose Menendez's natal Mars in Cancer. Mars is not happy in the sign of Cancer. It points to a character who is passive-aggressive to emotional, sensitive, defensive, overprotective, and clingy. He also brings the war back home as he is a victim of abuse from childhood. The current Mars retrograde will cross over Jose Menendez's natal Mars thrice, bringing his actions and their consequences back to light. This is enhanced by the fact that Mars retrograde begins on December 6, 2024 at 6 degrees Leo, right where his Pluto is in his chart. His violent death comes up and the use his power is put to question as Mars will cross over this point again on May 2, 2025 and maybe leave another hint or more. Kitty. On the day of the Netflix documentary, transiting Mercury was on top of her sun in Libra with information about her life, seeking to find justice and to tell the truth. The moon had crossed over her Venus, evoking varied emotions about her attitude as a mother. She is currently having her Jupiter return at 21 degrees Gemini, exactly where Jupiter, the truth teller, goes retrograde to cross over again on May 2, 2025. Lyle. On the day of the release of the Netflix documentary, transiting Venus in Scorpio in opposition to his Lilith in Taurus, highlights the creative tension and varied emotions generated from his shadow side. Mercury, the storyteller, heading towards his south lunar node in Libra, tells more about his letting go of toxic patterns in relationships as Chiron, not very far from his north lunar node in Aries, brings in healing to his life direction. The moon passes over his Venus in Sagittarius as the audience empathizes with his fight for freedom. As the north lunar node meets with his Saturn in Aries, both related to karmic destiny, there is a boost for embracing self-reliance, a fresh sense of duty and alleviation to a few restrictions. Over the last 5 years, transiting Pluto has been in a conjunction with his Mercury in Capricorn, transforming his way of thinking and how he fulfills his ambitions. Erik. Jupiter retrograde from the October 9, 2024 started at 21 degrees Gemini right opposite Erik's Mercury, 2 days after the release of the documentary. It will cross over this point again on April 30, 2025 with new information just before the Sun hits his Saturn on May 7, 2025, to lighten the restrictions in his life. As the documentary hit the screens and people connected to his story in different ways, Venus was on top of his moon and Jupiter conjunction and opposite his Saturn. Mercury on his Mars expounded on the violent events from that night. Lilith close to his Uranus showed the shadow side of family secrets. The north lunar node moving over his Chiron carried in karmic themes that healed the wound of self. The story of life and death was in the news all over the world by the full moon in Aries on October 17, 2024 that was conjunct Erik's Mars and Lyle's south lunar node, Jose's moon and Kitty's sun, all between 20 to 25 degrees of Libra, seeking justice for all.